Welcome to today's lesson on percents and decimals. So previously we've converted percents to fractions, fractions to percents. Now we're going to look at percents to decimals and vice versa, decimals to percents. So to get started, let's go ahead and look at how we would write 97% as a decimal. And what we're going to do is we're going to write it as a fraction first, and then we're going to divide, and that should get us a decimal. So 97%, if you remember from our previous lesson, just means 97 per 100. So 97 over 100. Now remember, fractions are just another way to write division. So I can take this 97 over 100 and do long division. So I have the 97 on the inside, 100 is our divisor. So 100 does not go into 9, it does not go into 7. Add a decimal point, add a 0. 100 goes into 979 times. And subtract, insert another 0. 100 goes into 707 times. And there we have it. We now have a decimal. So we have converted 97% into a decimal of 0.97, which, if you just said this as a good mathematician, you would say this is 97 hundredths, which is exactly what the fraction representation is. Now, what you'll notice if you do this over and over again, that when you divide by 100, you will always just be shifting the decimal 2 places to the left. So notice we have 97. We shift the decimal 2 places to the left, and we get our 97 hundredths as a decimal. So that's going to be kind of our more efficient way of doing this instead of doing long division for every problem, because every time you do the long division, that decimal point will just shift 2 places to the left. So let's go ahead and take a look at some examples. So again, we just learned that if we take that percent and we divide it by 100, we will get that decimal representation. We also learned that when we divide by 100, we are going to just shift the decimal 2 places to the left. So 52% turns into 0.52. And notice, again, if we said this, we would say this is 52 hundredths. Remember, 52% means 52 over 100. All right, looking at our next one, again, dividing by 100. This time we get 2.255. So 225 and 5/10% is equal to 2 and 255 thousandths. And finally, this one's going to turn out to be really small. We have a 27 hundredths of a percent, so that's a very small percentage. If we divide that by 100, we need to insert a 0. We get 0.2 zeros and then 27 for our answer. So 27 ten-thousandths. Here's some for you to try. Right, so you should get 0.24, 0.03, 1.07, and 0.927. All right, so let's go ahead and work the other way. So let's say we start with a number, we start with a decimal, and we want to convert it into a percent. So remember earlier, we said that if we take a percent over 100, we will get the decimal representation. Well, what if we have the decimal representation and we want to find out the percent? Well, if we just do a little solving for p, I'm going to multiply both sides by 100. And notice those cancel. So my percent is equal to that decimal representation times 100. And when you multiply by 100, you're just going to be shifting that decimal place to the right instead of the left. So when we take 0.47, we multiply it by 100 to get the percent. 0.47 is 47%. 0.663 multiplied by 100, will give us 66.3%. 12 as a percent, remember that decimal is right after the whole number. Shifting it 2 places to the right, we need to insert some zeros, and that's 1,200%. And finally, taking 1.009, multiplying that by 100, we get 109/10%. Okay, so again, going from a decimal to a percent, we take that decimal, we multiply it by 100, we get our percent. Please remember to put the percent symbols here as your units. All right, so try these on your own. All right, so we get 78%, 2.5%, 800%, and 1,402%. All right, so as you can see, there are many ways to represent any given number. So let's represent the following situation in several ways. So let's say you got 92 out of 100 on a test. Well, we could write that as a fraction, like we know, 92 over 100. We know we could write that as a decimal, 92 hundredths. We also know we can write that as a percent. So there's a few different ways we can write it. 4/10 could be written as 4 over 10. That can be scaled up to 40 over 100, which we know is 0.4 or 0.40, which is also 40%. And of course, we can simplify these. So there's other representations. These are just a few that I'm showing here. So why don't you go to the on your own and represent these two situations in a few different ways. So I just simply did 18 out of 100 as 18 over 100, which is 18 hundredths or 18%. 75 cents is like 0.75, like 75 cents with a dollar symbol here. And that's equal to 75% or 75 over 100. And again, we can simplify some of these fractions and get some other representations. So the key takeaway is that numbers can be represented in many different ways. So I've got 3 different number lines, and these are equivalent number lines. They all represent the same quantities, the same amount, just represented in different ways. So obviously 0% is 0 over 100, which is 0. And then I have 28% here. Well, we could represent that as a fraction as 28 over 100, simplified as 7/25. And then that same number as a decimal is 28 hundredths. Obviously, we have 50%. Over at 87%, that could be written as a fraction as 87 over 100. 0.87 or 87 hundredths as a decimal. So again, 3 different ways to represent that same quantity. And obviously 100% would be 100 over 100 or 1. As a decimal would just be 1. So the point here is that any given number can be represented in at least 3 different ways: as a percent, as a fraction, and as a number/decimal. All right, that'll do it for today.